Number 9. DARIA ALYABYEVA. During lockdown in April of 2020, a New York woman stabbed her roommate after she reportedly criticized her drinking habits. 31-year-old Tatiana Nazarenova and DARIA ALYABYEVA, 4 years her junior, lived together in an Upper East Side apartment. Nazarenova, who owned the home, had been helping ALYABYEVA get established in the city. Years prior, they'd lived together in California, but had fallen out over the latter's drinking. Nazarenova still felt that they should look out for each other, since they were both Russian. Yet before long, ALYABYEVA's drinking again put a strain on their relationship. Nazarenova tried to get her to sober up by banning drinking in the shared areas. On April the 19th, she found a whiskey glass in the living room and poured it down the sink. This enraged ALYABYEVA to the point that she grabbed the kitchen knife and started stabbing the woman, whom she'd referred to in the past as her best friend. Nazarenova sustained cuts and puncture wounds to her torso, shoulder, arms, hands, and face. She even reportedly saw a piece of intestine sticking out of her abdomen. As she lay bleeding, Nazarenova feared she was going to die and begged her attacker to call the police. ALYABYEVA refused to do so and abandoned her. The victim managed to call for help on her cell phone and was taken to a hospital, where doctors saved her life. 9 days after the attack, ALYABYEVA was arrested for attempted murder and imprisoned at Rikers Island. Number 8. Joe Schelling. In December of 2018, an American woman was brutally murdered by her roommate at a student complex in the Netherlands. 21-year-old Sarah Pappenheim from Minnesota had met Joe Schelling, aged 23, while studying at an Erasmus University in Eindhoven. They formed a connection through a shared interest in music, became friends and eventually moved in together. Schelling was withdrawn and Pappenheim would refer to herself as his only friend. After about a year and a half of them living in the apartment, Schelling started exhibiting anger and intense mood swings. In the days leading up to Pappenheim's murder, he'd reportedly confessed to her that he was going to kill 3 people. She was concerned and contacted aid workers, who talked to Schelling but saw no immediate reason to intervene. On December the 12th, a few days before Pappenheim was supposed to return to Minnesota for Christmas, police were called to the apartment. They found the young woman in severe condition, as she'd been stabbed and cut numerous times. Efforts to save her proved fruitless, and she bled to death in the apartment. Following his arrest, Schelling confessed to killing Pappenheim but said that all he remembered about the incident was being angry with her. Specialists found that the man had lost touch with reality due to a combination of psychosis, autism, and schizophrenia. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 6 years in prison and institutionalized psychiatric treatment. Number 7. Anthony Mendez. In February of 2020, a Florida man accidentally shot his roommate while playing with a firearm. According to the police, who responded to the call in Kissimmee, 23-year-old Anthony Mendez was irresponsibly handling his weapon in the apartment he shared with Savannah Lee Threats. It discharged and his roommate sustained a critical gunshot wound. Threats was already dead by the time police arrived on the premises. Mendez was charged with manslaughter, violation of probation, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. The nature of the man's priors is unclear, but considering the charges brought against him, he faced multiple years in prison. Number 6. Justin VANKIRK. A 35-year-old Pennsylvania man beat his roommate to death in 2016 following a dispute over stolen beer. Justin VANKIRK accused Charles Parker, his 58-year-old roommate, of taking some of his Keystone Ice beers without asking. Both men were described by neighbors as heavy drinkers. A fight broke out in Parker's bedroom, and the older man was punched several times in the face and head. Parker started to bleed from his mouth, and VANKIRK, who reportedly didn't want his roommate's blood to stain the carpet, dragged him to the living room floor. VANKIRK left him there and went to bed. He called 911 the following day when, upon returning home in the afternoon, found that Parker was still on the floor and no longer breathing. The man was pronounced dead at the scene, exhibiting bruising, swelling, and severe injuries to the back of the head. VANKIRK was ultimately found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to house arrest and probation. Number 5. Zachary Penton. In August of 2016, 21-year-old Zachary Penton fatally shot his roommate in the Arizona home they were sharing. The victim was 41-year-old Daniel Garofalo. Based on his past social media posts, Penton had reportedly developed a firearm obsession. In June, in one of his Twitter posts, Penton expressed surprise at how easy it had been for him to purchase a gun. 2 days before he shot Garofalo, in one of his tweets, Penton claimed that he needed to move out before he viciously murdered his roommate. According to Penton's account of the shooting, Garofalo had burst into his room asking him to move out. The man then reportedly tackled him and took away his phone, which Penton claimed had caused him to fear for his safety. He reached under his pillow, pulled out a semi-automatic handgun, and shot him dead. Penton's legal representation argued self-defense and claimed that the tweets weren't an indication of premeditation. Penton eventually pled down to manslaughter from second-degree murder charges and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Number 4. Ricardo Medina Jr. In 2015, an actor best known for his role as one of the Power Rangers fatally stabbed his roommate with a Conan the Barbarian-type sword. Back in 2002, Ricardo Medina Jr. played Cole Evans, the Red Wild Force Ranger, on the popular series. Medina's career never really achieved mainstream success beyond the role, and in 2015 he was living in Green Valley, California, with roommate Joshua Sutter. On February the 1st, Medina and Sutter, both in their late 30s at the time, got into an argument involving Medina's girlfriend. After the men had come to blows, Medina and his girlfriend retreated to his bedroom. Sutter allegedly broke through the door, and it was then that Medina picked up the double-edged sword. He used the weapon to stab Sutter, who died of his injuries after arriving at the hospital. Medina ultimately pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was given a 6-year sentence. Number 3. James Hugo. In 2014, a Tampa man was charged with manslaughter after beating his roommate to death following an argument involving a chicken foot. After staying at a homeless shelter, Benjamin Calderon moved in with James Hugo. Calderon hoped to work as an armed security officer and was saving money for a license. The men, both in their 50s, had gotten along at first. Then on February the 15th, Calderon grabbed a chicken foot from a skillet where Hugo was cooking. Furious, Hugo started relentlessly pummeling him with his fists. Calderon sustained severe trauma and succumbed to internal bleeding. Hugo confessed to beating his roommate to death following his arrest and was charged with manslaughter. Florida police records revealed he'd been arrested 19 times in the past. Calderon's brother, who was deeply affected by the incident, told a media outlet that no one deserves to die over a chicken foot. Today's topic was requested by EJ1575 and Kabunzi. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Dillon Kim. In 2015, a student from Santa Clara University in California was almost killed following a gruesome attack perpetrated by his roommate, 19-year-old Dillon Kim. The unnamed victim awoke at about 3 a.m. to find Kim standing over him with a knife. In what was deemed to have been a completely unprovoked attack, Kim stabbed him in the throat and then cut him on the shoulder and head. He broke free, but Kim gave chase and stabbed him once more in the back. The victim eventually reached an adjoining room where another student called 911. It was then that Kim turned the knife on himself, inflicting a long cut in his neck. On-campus paramedics, who were also students at the university, intervened before emergency services arrived at the scene. They were credited with saving the lives of both the attacker and his victim. Kim was arrested and charged with attempted murder. A disturbing mugshot showed the young man with a long scar and stitches where he'd cut himself. Kim was questioned by the authorities, but gave no reason for the attack. Number 1. Jeffrey Dahmer. Before becoming one of the most notorious serial killers in U.S. history, Jeffrey Dahmer enlisted in the U.S. Army and trained as a medical specialist. By the time he'd joined the military, Dahmer had already killed a man in Ohio and openly boasted about it when drunk. But his fellow soldiers didn't believe him. From 1979 to 1981, he was stationed in West Germany, and his roommate at the time was Billy Capshaw. Years later, Capshaw would detail the nightmarish time he spent with Dahmer while describing him as a sociopath, a psychopath, and a narcissist. Soon after they'd started living together, Dahmer began to completely control Capshaw. He beat and tortured him. He'd strike him across the joints with a metal bar from a bed apparatus. Capshaw learned not to scream or cry during the abuse, as it only made Dahmer hit him harder. He wasn't taken seriously by his superiors whenever he tried to complain. Capshaw was repeatedly drugged and tied to the bed, while Dahmer controlled the only key to the room. Capshaw stated that he wanted to kill Dahmer in his sleep and then take his own life. He subsequently regretted not having killed him, in light of the monster he would become. Dahmer was discharged from the military in 1981 due to his alcohol abuse. A few years later, he began his killing spree, claiming at least 16 victims, with many of his later murders involving cannibalism and body parts being preserved as trophies. Thanks for watching. Would you share a $2 million home with a murderer if you could live there for free? Let us know in the comments section below.